Good evening and welcome. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Board of Directors meetings and committee meetings are open to the public but are not public meetings. All school district residents who wish to make public comment should sign in prior to the start of the meeting and request to speak during citizens' participation. School district residents wishing to speak to the board shall do so only during the citizen participation section of the meeting. Public comment is welcome, and all issues will be referred to the appropriate board committee or administrator. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be available by contacting the business office. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. Prior to this meeting, the board conducted an administrative session to discuss board procedures, and all of the board members are accounted for except for Mike Dickerson and Tim Sigmund, who are excused this evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Does anyone have questions for the notices and communications? That includes the cash activity summary, capital projects funds report, year-end projections report, food service report, and student activities second quarter report. Okay, hearing none, we're moving on to citizens' participation. Do we have any citizens' participation this evening? We do not. Okay, thank you. Straight into routine approvals. My apologies. Normally I do this on my computer and my internet's not working, so I'm just gonna flip through and find them all. All right, so we're looking at taking this as a chunk. That's 5.1, the agenda, 5.2, the financial report, 5.3, the early graduates, 5.4, human resources recommendations. Do I have a motion for those, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Madam President.
Yes, Kathleen.
I would like to congratulate our two retirees, Tamala Becker, kindergarten teacher from James Geddes. Thank her for 31 years of service to the district. Chad Deckert, technical education high school, 25 years of service to our district. And we thank both of them and we wish them well in retirement.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, many, many years of service between the two of them. I'm also going to give a shout out to that impressive list of early graduates for completing all those requirements, and it's a big accomplishment. So congratulations to them. All right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we will vote. Ryan?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Justine?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on to items for board action. We have a handful of policies. I think, can I take, thank you, that's very helpful. I appreciate that. There's a lot of pages to flip through otherwise. Wonderful. All right, so 6.1 to 6.6, unless I hear any requests to separate those, I'm also going to take those as a clump. So that would be 6.1, Policy 100, Comprehensive Planning, 6.2, Policy 113.3, Discipline of Students with Disabilities, Policy 113.4, Confidentiality of Special Education Information, 6.4, Policy 146, Student Services, all policies that we have had on as information items in the past, and 6.5, the ACTI Nursing Agreement for the 25-26 school year that came back on our table, and 6.6, the MOU Workday Calendar that has been signed with the Gettysburg Area Education Association already, and this is just us approving it so that it can be changed in the collective bargaining agreement. May I have a motion for 6.1 to 6.6?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on those items?
Just a quick comment that we had a really good policy committee meeting. I guess that was last Tuesday, I believe. A good, robust discussion on several of these that some are new, some are just updated. And thanks to Dr. Dalton for her consulting on these. Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, we will vote. Dave?
Yes.
Justine?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on. Oh, no.
I will
did it
also vote
again.
yes.
Ryan, thank you. My check at the top. One of these days. It's at least once a month here. Thank you, Ryan. All right. We are moving on to information items. Any questions for 7.1? That's the York Adams Academy General Operating Budget. This is very similar to the LIU operating budget that we are required to approve because we have students who attend there. Questions for 7.1?
How many seats do we have there?
I believe at this moment we have 4.
4. Gotcha. Thank you.
Great. Hearing no additional questions. Questions on policy 111, lesson plans?
I do have
Go ahead,
questions. And it could be my interface, I don't know, but the document that's attached, I don't see the PSBA suggested changes in black or the GASD changes in red. Can you tell us what they are?
I'm pulling it up on my own end, but I do, what I do know from this one is that it was so outdated, we proposed a new one, an entirely new one. So I'm not sure how it reflects on board docs, or agenda manager, I should say. But it was sort of just so oldish, we needed a newish one. So.
Yeah, I did ask Morgan about that in terms of our practice of writing on those, that for the ones that are being updated in a small manner, that would turn up red. But if it is something that's either brand new or overhauled to the point of being new, that would then not be all in red. But that typically they're listed as new. So perhaps this one.
Yeah, this is a
could be viewed-
replacement. It's not even new. It's like the district
full
has had
replacement.
one, but we're proposing a new one
Thanks.
because it was just from the 90s, I think. So,
Wow.
yeah,
We want lesson plans from the 2020s.
at least the 21st century.
All right.
Small goal.
Any other questions on 7.2? Okay, 7.
I'm sorry, just
Oh, yep, go ahead,
to be
Ryan.
crystal clear, though, it does say on here last revised October 18, 2004. So the document that we're seeing in front of us has no revisions. It is the original, and we're then in the process of revising it. Is that accurate?
My internet's not working either, so I can't seem to. I have what I sent in, which
I see what
doesn't have a revision date on it. But even if it's 2004, I think that it's technically not new to you guys. It's just going to be a lot of new information, but it's not like a new policy. Like you've already had it in place. So if it says 2004, it's still 22 years old.
Well, right. So now we're
don't-
wondering if this is the updated one or if it's the old one. I guess is what the
I can't.
question.
It won't pull up on my. I'll try.
Well, how about we find out? How about we find out if that is the updated one and the date was just not edited, or if not, we can
Yeah.
we can put it back on as an information item next meeting if needed. If that's not the up-to-date one.
I have no reason to think it isn't. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
talks about, I know
this looks to
it
be
looks
right.
like it's the new one.
Okay.
Yeah, like this is the new one. I will say it's only, yeah. And then we had 2 comments. The one was where it says delegation of responsibility. It said teachers shall make thorough preparation. That second sentence, we had just said that the lesson plans shall be completed and submitted in the designated online platform. That's optional. So that was our one comment on that. And then the next one was just making sure for number 1 within the guidelines, that number 1 line, that the lesson plans should to consider some language about that they should be prepared in the designated format or template. So basically just trying to have some consistency throughout. Otherwise, we didn't really make too many plans. This is an optional policy. This is just a way to sort of make sure we're having some consistency throughout the district, but there was nothing else like other than, I think, updating it from 2004. So if it has that date, I think that's fine, that it was in existence, and then we're just sort of updating it with entirely new language. Is that where I see it going? Yeah.
No, you do.
That is the new language. The question was whether we had added or revised it in any way. We had basically taken PSBA's newest version, looked at it, and gave two options on optional language, but otherwise we had nothing to take away from what PSBA was offering. So the one sentence within delegation of responsibility and number one within guidelines, each of which we just basically said that they can be in a certain format, and those are optional pieces of language. Otherwise, it's good to go.
And we can look at having the last revised date updated.
Yeah,
So I do just
right.
want to
Yeah.
pop in really
Well,
quick.
it would be the date that we next approve it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the date would be changed to what the approval date is, but like, for example, policy 100, like the lesson plan one, that was completely reformatted. The original policy that was updated has the old logo, was probably done on a typewriter, is the format that it was in. So the one that you're looking at attached to the agenda is completely reformatted up to date. So what you see attached to the agenda is the newest form.
Yeah, it just doesn't have our revisions on it because the language was optional and the policy committee agreed with that language to keep it in. So it's brand new, right, language-wise.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all the questions and clarifications there. We have a handful of other policies on here. Are there questions about 7.3, policy 218.1?
Yes,
Go ahead,
I
Kathleen.
do. I do have questions. So in the definitions section under weapon, we are removing replica of a weapon. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, because based on legislative change, there is a new requirement that requires reporting based on any incident with a weapon. And it's based on the policy that each district has. And so there is a concern, and I don't disagree with the concern, that we will now be reporting, and the reporting requirement is to parents and to employees within any school building where a weapon, as defined by this policy, is defined. And so it would likely, and I'm going to let the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, who are going to be in charge of all this communication, weigh in, but that there would be a lot of communication about look-alike replica weapons. And there's also, from a lot of work I've done with families, there's been a lot of angst, I will say, about discipline based on a look-alike when it seems like the student themselves is maybe being targeted. You know, there's been just a lot of concern about using a replica for a weapon rather than a true, in fact, weapon when it comes to the type of discipline that is associated with this policy and having a weapon in place. So most of our clients are removing the replica, and this is what we talked about at the policy committee, because a look-alike weapon will increase the reporting on what a weapon is under Act 47 for purposes, or Act 44 for purposes of having to now report every single time that there's a weapon. So I will let Drs. Matzner and McFarland weigh in, but that is just I'm not going to say it's advice, but we believe that that it is an appropriate removal from the policy, though a handful of districts are keeping it in, but most of the districts are removing replica from their policy.
So I have a couple thoughts about that. If I'm in a building and someone has a replica weapon and is being even implicitly threatening with it, I may not know the difference that it is real or fake. And I'm thinking also, 3D printing can create actual weapons.
Yes.
But I think technically they may even be called replica weapons.
Yes.
So I think I have a little bit of heartburn about taking that out. I understand the concern about the reporting. I don't want to say burden because I don't think it's a burden, but I hear that.
But I think one of the things.
I'm concerned on even people's perceived safety in the buildings with replica weapons being allowed.
I think one of the things that, and Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, we talked about at the policy committee meeting was if we take it out and somebody were to bring in like something 3D printed or even was somewhat threatening with it, we would still have the ability to communicate that home to the parents that this happened and handle that. If we had a first grader, second grader bring a water gun into school that is not threatening at all, but is a replica, we would still have to report to all the parents in that building that a student brought a water gun to school. And we don't necessarily want to have to be reporting that every time a student brings a water gun to school, because you may be getting reports all the time. So we want to really focus it on being able to report when there's a real issue that needs to be reported. So correct me if I'm wrong, but taking the replica of a weapon out gives us a little bit of flexibility on, if it's a Nerf gun, if it's a water gun, we don't necessarily have to then go through the whole process of communicating that to all the families that a student brought that in.
And there are other ways to address a student bringing in a replica of a weapon than under this policy. This policy is a pretty hardcore policy. There's a lot that's tied to it, and there's a lot that ties Dr. Batzner's hands in terms of, like, a recommended 1-year expulsion simply, and I'm not laughing away a replica, but it ties hands, whereas I think there's more, discretion within central admin and within the board to respond to this policy. If there are ways to address the possession of a replica weapon that are not necessarily based on this policy, and that's where we have landed with many of our clients who do not, their board and their superintendent and their central admin do not want to be reporting every time a lookalike weapon is brought in. But that, again, is left up to the district. So I just want to say, I think there are other ways you could handle a student with a replica that wouldn't have the same ramifications under this policy that are required.
Well, I hear what you're saying about toys, right? Like a water gun, that's a toy, and a toy gun would be a replica. I get that definition. That makes sense to me. I guess I'm just more concerned about replicas that really look like the actual weapon and the people in the buildings not knowing the difference, and that's a concern for me.
Again, Dr. Massner and Dr. McFarland can also step into this. I hear that concern. I share that concern. I think for me, outside of this policy, there are many different procedures and expectations in place at the building level that our administrative team have as a crisis response team or whatever it may be to address that. So I think should there be an adult in the building who sees something that is a replica and they don't know, then they're going to report that the same way they would report anything else. This just enables them to respond appropriately to whatever that outcome may be. And maybe you guys could speak to some of the procedures in place for addressing a disciplinary action with something that is not an actual weapon, because this addresses the actual weapon.
Mr. President, just real quickly, Dr. McFarland, before you start, I am so glad in the school systems, the pendulum swings back and forth regarding zero tolerance policies. Getting away from zero tolerance policies and giving our school leaders that we've hired and giving them discretion, I think is the way to go. I think Coach Mike Krzyzewski maybe said it best. I don't want to be a dictator or a manager. I want to be a leader, and leadership requires discretion. I like giving our superintendent, assistant superintendent, and principals as much discretion as possible. Every disciplinary situation is somewhat unique, and I think taking in the multifaceted factors that come into making a decision regarding consequences and so on, really, this policy, I think, allows them to use their professional discretion that we would like for them to use. Thank you.
Sure. If I could just add to that very briefly, we'd handle all of those in very, very different manners, obviously. If a student brings in a water gun in his book bag because it's, June 1st and we're going to a friend's house afterwards, and that kindergartner just did it because we always play water guns there. It allows this policy change allows us to operate underneath intent. I agree with you entirely, Ms. Pratt. If we have a lookalike gun that is brought in and that student is using it intending to scare or threaten or harm, we can still notify under Act 44 to our families and then handle that with an appropriate disciplinary consequence up into suspension. However, if the policy contains that replica weapon in. The student who forgot that the Nerf gun was in the book bag, who is in kindergarten, who doesn't even check the book bag, and just put it on in the morning because they were rushed, now notifying that there was a firearm brought to school, and moving forward with disciplinary action according to Act 44. So this allows us to look at each individual situation and respond accordingly for how it's being used, and allows us to work as an administrative team moving forward in that regard.
Thank you.
Any other questions on policy 7.3? Okay, moving on to the next one. Questions on policy that's not policy 7.3, policy 218.2 this time, terroristic threats. Questions or comments on that one?
Yes.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
All right. So just a question, and I'm having some connectivity issues, so I'm not able to pull this one up. But there is a sentence that says the superintendent or designee may report incidents involving terroristic threats on school property, etc., to law enforcement agency. So I'm curious why that doesn't say shall report. So if there's a terroristic threat that is in fact made, why may versus shall?
I will say a lot of what has to be reported is based on the Safe Schools MOU, which is under Chapter 10, which is all the regulations on what a district may and must report to law enforcement. But I know with you having law enforcement here employed by the district, it's probably a lower bar how often things are being reported to the police, but because sometimes a terroristic threat may not meet the standards of the definition that's within this policy. And the question sometimes, or not the question, the response sometimes can be handled internally and sometimes can be handled by law enforcement. And it does depend on the nature of the threat, whether it's founded and the extent to which we believe there will be some harm that will come. But that does fall under the Safe Schools MOU, Chapter 10, which has a list of A, required reporting, and a list of B, discretionary reporting.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on that policy? Okay, moving on to 7.5, policy 218.3, student adjudicated convicted of sexual assault. Questions on that one? You're allowed to have questions, Kathleen. That is okay. Go ahead.
I do have questions. Now, I read through this twice because I thought, gosh, I think I'm missing something. But so I just have a couple questions for clarification. As I read through this, I just felt like the policy didn't go far enough to protect the victim. So here are my questions, and it really is focused on that. So, okay.
Sure.
First, who is our Title IX coordinator?
Dr. McFarland.
That's me.
Okay, thank you. That was just curious. I was just curious about that. Okay. All right. So, if we're in the section about, let me find this. Now, again, this policy is about students who have been adjudicated or convicted of sexual assault.
Yeah,
So,
this just as by like a brief one sentence about this policy, this is very much a literal response to a law that was passed in 2019 that requires everything in this policy. So everything in this policy is required by law.
all right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Just saying.
That helps. We want to follow the law for sure. All right. So, but I still have the question.
Yeah, no, I get it.
All right. In section 1.
Uh-huh.
So this is, again, conviction or adjudication. So we're not saying maybe it happened. We're saying this.
So conviction is if they're charged as an adult. Adjudication is if they're charged as a juvenile. Either way, they have been found to have sexually assaulted a student who is also a district student in Gettysburg. Yeah.
Yes. So in section 1, this is the section that speaks to if the action happened on school
On campus.
property. All right. So my question there is this. If the Title IX coordinator determines that the convicted or adjudicated student, and here's where I get a little harper, I'm not done, does not pose an immediate threat to the physical health or safety of any student or other individual arising from the conviction or adjudication of sexual harassment, sexual assault, then essentially the student can return to school and
So it's a yes and a no. I just have to say that the elements of any element that references Title IX is because we have to remember that school districts, Title IX is a civil rights law or Civil Rights Act. And then we have our criminal code of conduct, our state, criminal code that's going to say whether you're convicted or adjudicated. Technically speaking, if we were to follow this law without taking any Title IX considerations, it would be a violation of that, would call it the respondent, the person who either is convicted or adjudicated. It's technically a violation of their rights under Title IX if we don't do an analysis under Title IX. It is a very brief analysis. We are going to look at a document from a court, because that's the only way this policy comes into play, is a document from the court that says so-and-so is adjudicated or so-and-so is convicted of sexual assault. We're going to look at that. Emergency removal is a really high bar. That means that we haven't made a determination that the student has violated Title IX. It is very likely that Dr. McFarland, upon receiving an adjudication or a conviction from an outside law enforcement court, a court that was, enforcing a charge and has found a student to be guilty, it is very likely that there's not much more than that particular piece of proof. We would go through the Title IX process really briefly, but for purposes of again, under Title IX, it is a civil rights law that we want to make sure that we treat the students fairly, but it is going to be a brief time because we will have the proof that shows that the student was convicted or adjudicated, and we would likely remove them pretty quickly from the time that we would be notified. Sometimes that we don't know, like their student could be charged with an assault and we don't know until we get the actual conviction or adjudication. Is the Title IX coordinator going to get the piece of information and say, no, the student is not a harm? And the emergency removal is a really, really high bar. And so it's likely that the student will qualify for the emergency removal, but it's sort of the policy language that has to be in there to show that we're considering all angles of the student's actions. It would probably be a little less advisable to have no language in there to just assume. I don't know. It's just sort of the way it goes, because there's different level. There's a preponderance of evidence in our level of consideration, and then there's a different standard under the criminal code, for criminal code as to whether they admitted or committed a certain act.
Right, and this policy really comes into play after
it's been done, and
after it's already been decided that the act was, that the student was in fact guilty.
Yeah, and it's like, and I've had less than a handful of situations where this policy comes into play, and it's usually a matter of a conversation, and the parent of the convicted or adjudicated student is already well aware. We already know what's going to happen, but we have it in the policy to show that we're still going to consider. Based on what our obligation is under Title IX, but for the most part, we are going to be removing the student pretty efficiently, pretty quickly from the time we get the notice from the legal side of things.
Mm-hmm. I would hope so. I think every student matters, for sure.
Absolutely.
Even students who are convicted of a crime, they're people, and they matter, for sure. But I really do have a deep concern for the victim, for a student who we still want to come to school and thrive in an academic setting and then in their adult lives.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine a situation where a victim would have to be in the school building with
Up until
someone-
this law, there
Wow.
was nothing to protect them from that. And so
Nothing at all.
basically, if I were to get a call tomorrow from Dr. Matzner that they received a notice, the student would probably not be returning, but we would still be internally doing some of these processes, but we would make sure that they weren't returning until we knew, we were assured of our next steps, which is to probably, if it's on campus, they can't come back. If it isn't on campus, there's some discretion, and that would depend on the administration and conversations with the board.
Yeah, thank you. And I did read that.
Yeah.
When I read through this twice, I did read that.
It's a long one, but it's intentionally.
I did read the attempts that will be made to protect the victim, and that is in here.
Yeah.
I just felt like we could go a little further, but you've You've settled my mind a little bit, so.
Yeah, there are very few circumstances where we've received a letter of a conviction and we're like, okay, let's bring the kids back and let's have a kumbaya. Like, that's not how it works in this situation. It's a pretty significant act that we handle seriously. So yeah, sure.
Thank you. Any other questions on that policy? Okay, one more policy. We're looking at 7.6, policy 236.1, threat assessments. Any question on that one? Great, hearing none. All right, moving on to information item 7.7, GASD preliminary budget presentation. All right, Belinda, we're ready for you.
First, I see you all pretty much generally caught the memo that we're in black, so I had to mention that as I looked around the table. But anyway, first view of the 2026-27 budget. Next slide, please. So just to, regarding, since we have several new members, our budget process really begins in October. We issue directives to our building principals and our program directors. The directive usually will set the parameter, basically say this past year we were targeting 26-27 estimates with the lower of 23-24 actuals or 25-26 budget allocations as the maximum amount. Any new additions and justifications had to be justified and ready to support the reasons thereof. Our budgets were due in November, right before Thanksgiving. Our budget reviews occurred December 11th through December 18th. During the month of January, we had some software uploads by job class. Job class typically means by department, so it'll be like facilities department, it'll be like Lincoln Elementary, it'll be by job class department, so it's easy identified within our system. And all of the payroll contracts, including active, proposed, and retirements known as of January, February, as well as the audit wrap-up is expected in January, so we can ascertain the unassigned fund balance to garner, if need, any fund balance necessary to balance the next year's budget. We present the preliminary as early as possible, typically wait until the governor's proposal and the board directives to help direct further changes. The governor's proposal was out. We're still waiting on numbers per se, simply because I do not anticipate a large change in the governor's proposal. I think we will pretty much be at bay, but with what we have for state funds. Then further, we review with cabinet, and then, of course, the first review with the board, which is this evening, and we continue to review with the board up until the final adoption. Next slide. So, as we begin with any budget cycle, we begin with the end in mind. The end is being June 1st, in accordance with our budget meeting, our board meetings, that we have intend to adopt by June 1st. In Act 1 guidelines, there are certain requirements that need to be met in order to make sure that you're processing along with your budget, meaning that there is a required number of notification for approval. So the important dates on this slide, of course, with the end in mind, June 1st, we have to back up and by April 20th, approve, adopt the advertisement and a proposed final. This action requires a 30-day notice prior to the action on the final budget. It's required in law that you have to have a certain timeline associated with it before you can approve a final budget. May 4th, along with our board meetings, we will have a public hearing. And then, of course, June 1st is the date that we will move for action, final budget approval, tax rates, and fund balance discussions for that night. Next slide. So, known variables and changes for this budget. Heck of a year, first of all, I'll say. But regardless, the expense and revenue funding will be a third year for ACTI commitment, and we are shooting for a 4-year, so this would be the third, 26-27 would be the third year. So, of course, we had some funding for personnel, we had some contract approvals, we have healthcare costs, cost of services, this includes special education, charters, transportation costs, and, of course, inflation in some of the areas as well. Biggest change for 26-27 is the adoption of the comprehensive plan and what special education will mean to our district moving forward. Of course, we always have Act 1 index. This year in planning, it's 4.2%. The rules involved are, of course, the resolution not to exceed, which the board has already done that, so which in order allows us to provide more time for review and changes up until the end of the time. Also, during this process, we find out what our unassigned fund balance. Our policy itself says that it needs to maintain 6 to 8%. We are currently maintaining 6%, and that is down from the past few years, but the unassigned fund balance is rolling right at 6%. County real estate assessment data. So in this presentation today, it'll be utilizing the November certification of the assessment data. More is to come, so I'm likely to see more changes in terms of assessment, but not by leaps and bounds. Basically, more certifications will be coming in, more determinations will need to be had in terms of properties that are available, which would actually hit the rolls on July 1. So we will continually receive updates from the assessment office, and we will provide those updates as we continue to review and update our budget. Expense changes, as well as any directives by the board, will be discussed, and we again continue to monitor and update the revenue and expenditures. Next slide. So, requirements and requests. The biggest requirement and the biggest effect on our budget is the Special Education Comprehensive Plan. What does that mean? Well, during that plan, we are committing to 7 positions. 4 of those were added to the 25-26 year. I'll pause for just a second. Those 4 that were added to the 25-26 year were not a school district's choice to do. The IU had indicated to us that they were pulling back some services, therefore our district had to be responsive to those. So while our current budget did not plan for those 4 positions, we now have to include them in next year's position because the likelihood of them going away is not probable. So 7 positions, 4 were added in the 25-26 year, and 3 are anticipated more for the 26-27 year. And those areas that of service are AS, autistic support, life skills, learning support, all required, and all as a response to the IU's level of service that they're pulling back on and that the district is taking on based upon the Special Education Comprehensive Plan. Out of that, the request for the new budget is a social worker. Also, in addition to the comp plan, there's a request for another supervisor of special education. And the ultimate goal there is we already have 1, but we want to have another simply because we can designate 1 for elementary and 1 for secondary. In just a few minutes, I'll talk a little bit about numbers. And so therefore, bear in mind is the importance of having 2 supervisors simply because the magnitude of some of the AIPs, am I saying that correctly? IPs, are quite cumbersome, and as well as increasing in numbers. So therefore, not just 1 person can handle that type of workload. Another request for the new year is the technology department, which is a classified position. This is really assistance with PIMS, help desk, and building supports. There is a need to help bring in more technology supports to the district. So that is really the main goal in the requirements and the requests for next year. So you can see the slide doesn't have a lot, but the side represents a lot of changes in our district's budget. So moving forward, next slide. Our general fund revenue is proposed. So we have an operating total revenue of $79.7 million. Out of that, the local is $54 million, state is $24.4 million, and federal is $1.13 million. The federal other is basically sale of assets, which is very minute. The majority of our budget, of course, is local funds. As you can see that it is 68% versus 31% state. I don't anticipate receiving a lot of additional state funds, so the revenue source is either going to fall on some changes and or local revenue being changed. Some of the federal funds, I'd like to announce that we are still including sources from Title I, II, III, and IV. It's uncertain if 3 or 4 will remain. We have heard that Title I and II will be still in effect. So there could be some changes in sort of the revenue section for the federal budget moving forward too. As more is known, when we will know is not certain, but that 1.13 million is basically current year's revenue sources of all title programs. Next slide. This is another slide bar chart, as you can see, where really proportionately all for the actuals to the budget to the proposed, where it all lies. It's mostly funded by local, state, and federal. They haven't changed much by revenue by year. Next slide. Our expenditures by object. So it's far easier to discuss a budget when you can kind of put not by function, but by object. Object are the sources. So, for example, everyone is familiar with salaries and benefits, purchase of service and supplies, rather than education, instruction versus special and support services and so forth. But I can also cover that in just a few slides. But for the most part, so our proposed expenditures are $85.9 million. Our salaries and benefits, which is our 1 and 200 object series, is $49.2 million. Purchase of services, which is 3, 4, and 500 objects, $22.3 million. Our supplies, which covers supplies, technology support services, support such as software and so forth, is just $4 million, which is 5%. And then other expenses, which is our 7, 800, 900 categories, includes all of our debt, all our principal interest, capital reserve, and some replacement of equipment for $10.3 million. The largest portion of our budget, of course, 57%, salary and benefits, which is not a surprise, simply because we're a service organization servicing the education of our students. Next slide. Here's a graph showing where the largest changes are. As you can see, of course, the salaries and benefits are going up. The biggest change in the budget is purchase of services, which I'll explain relative to special education. Supplies have remained relatively consistent, as well as the other expenses. Next slide. As I mentioned before, it's easier to discuss a budget by object. This is a discussion by function. So functionality of a district's budget, instruction. So out of our total $85 million, what's attributed to just instruction alone? That's $49.8 million. Support services are all other services such as principal services, facility services, and so forth. That comes into $24.5 million. Operations and non-instructional services, which is a 3,000 series, $1.7 million. The facilities and construction is a 4,000 series. Of course, there's $0 there. That's simply saying the general fund is not supporting facilities and construction. That would typically be capital reserve. Other financing sources, principal interest and capital reserve funds to move towards capital reserve, $9.7 million. ACTI funding is in that 5,000 category of other financing services. So the majority of our budget, of course, is 58% of instruction, 29% support services, operation 2%, and other financing sources of 11%. Next slide. Here it is again, just showing a bar chart, just kind of relatively show the natural increases in terms of instruction. Instruction and support services is the majority of where the changes are for our current budget. Next slide. I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't talk about fund balance comparison. Just over a 3-year period, the actual versus current versus proposed. We can definitely see a decline on fund balance, and I will reference this as unassigned fund balance. This is not committed, assigned, and or restricted fund balance, which you can clearly see in the audit how those assignments are. So the unassigned fund balance obviously over the next 3 years is declining. What does fund balance mean to the district? Next slide. It really means the cash on hand, especially over the summer months. We typically how cash flow occurs when the taxes go out. Funds were attributed to the district. We will take and invest them out and invest them according to our payroll calendar, our accounts payable calendars, and we will bring back investments in order to pay. This really indicates of the unassigned fund balance, how many days on hand can we operate or not operate with unassigned fund balance. And this is really assuming cash only, no receivables, and it's calculated on a 365-day a year. So you can see we had 24 days in 21. As we move to 26, we're down to 13. 27, we're now below 15 days with the proposed budget. Next slide. We talk a little bit about demographics. I'm not sure if this was really shared over previously. I know we had a demographic study. What I like to point out here is we have, over since 2016, we were slightly increasing. We've come down in 21, 22. Again, those are COVID years, so we've seen a little bit of a change. Now, why you'll see 24, 25, and 26 the same is simply because last PIMS reporting and last certified data has not been obtained yet for those years. So we maintain that the last known actual enrollment on file, which is 2,886 students. Next slide. So per pupil general fund expenditures. So this is the general fund expenditures divided by district educated enrollment. Well, this was a slide before. So you can see their expenditures. This is our actuals along with our 26 here, which is a current budget number, but the others are actuals. So we could take the total district expenditures divided by education enrollment. And you can see that for 25 ended, it's $26,948 per student. Next slide.
Linda, can I ask a quick question
Sure.
about that? Is that based off of that number that was static, like not having the enrollment number? So in theory, we know the money, but we don't know the official enrollment?
So the official enrollment, very good question. So the previous enrollment was certified at 2,886. So it's taking the district expenditures divided by 2,886.
So that may not be entirely accurate for the most current years.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Mm-hmm. The demographics daily cost per pupil is the next slide. This is based upon 180 days. So of course you can see, again, the factor of the enrollment and divided by 180 days, this is the cost per day. So for 2025, it was $150 per day per student for 180 days. Next slide. I know we talk a little bit about, we are a service industry. We are very much heavy on the benefits and the personnel cost of the district, which is majority of what we do. But how do we invest in our people is the question. So, understanding the staff compensation and how it fits into the district's budget is something I wanted to share with our board, simply because I don't think we've ever really talked about it in a high level. So the next slide. The share of salaries and benefits are very important. So we have contracts in place. The salary expense makes up 34.55% of the budget. Benefit cost makes up 25.31%. The benefits represent 42.28 cents on every dollar spent on compensation. So you can see, this is as of 2026. So this is where we are anticipating and how we are planning appropriately. So this number is obtained by several resources pulling in data. So this isn't just on budget. This is looking out at several reporting agencies that are required that we provide information to. So a further breakdown is how is it distributed? Next slide. So 72.75% of those salaries all equate to the certified professional staff in the district. The classified staff are next in line at 14.94%. Administrative salaries account for 9.85%, and all other roles together represent 2.4% of the salaries dollars. So the largest equation in the whole salary structure, again, 72.75% of our total budget equates to salary spending. So next slide, please. Type of benefits we provide. Of course, we provide retirement, health insurance, and other benefits as part of the total benefit package. Our retirement benefits accounts for 56.82% of all benefit dollars. Health insurance benefits represent 37.53%. That's medical, dental, life, health, and I'm forgetting one. Vision. All other benefits equate to 5.65%. Within our control is all other benefits. And why I say that, this includes some HSA funding, which, was discussed greatly at negotiations. And so that number could potentially gain, but that number could potentially reduce, not for next year, of course, but probably within the next contracts negotiation. But as you can see, that number is the smallest percentage. Retirement benefits makes up the majority, and that is mandated. So, of course, that's not changing anytime soon. Health insurance, as we all know, keeps increasing from year after year. Just the cost of services keeps increasing. So we try to, being a part of Lincoln Benefit Trust, the self-funding, we try to help offset some of those peaks and try to avoid the declines in the peaks, and rather try to stay consistent with the healthcare cost. That only helps our staff as well as our district's budget. As next slide then, please. So from here, we'll move to special education. We'll spend a little bit of time. Next slide, please. So why I felt this is important to say and to show in a graph form. So 428 special education enrollment for fiscal year 24. That is a true number. That is actual. Out of that, that's 5.6% growth, historical special education from 19 to 2024. In comparison, we are well above state's special education enrollment growth, because that growth is 2.54%. And then, of course, the average national special education growth is 1.59%. So Gettysburg is providing special education service above national as well as state trends. And it will continue to go simply because the needs need to be met by the students in which we serve. When I talk a little bit about what that special education enrollment is, we are seeing a huge increase for the 26-27. As I mentioned before, this influx is all across special education services. However, the main influx is the AS Autistic Support Services. So, we received notice from the IU, again, as I mentioned before, that they're scaling back some of their services. So, of course, we've got to provide service in some fashion or other, whether that's in district or whether we're sending them to a location to receive services. I would just want to indicate to you how much this growth has occurred. So, for example, 2023-24, we identified 4 AS students. 24-25, we identified 22. So 22 plus 4. 25-26, we've identified 17. So 17 plus 22 and 4. 26-27, we have identified approximately with the pre-K student numbers coming in, the potential of 15 more AS students needing to be served. So over a 4-year window, we are anticipating a service of 58 autistic support students. It's either internally or sending them out to a location. An approximate cost for an AS student is about $70,000 per student. We've utilized out-district placement of such services such as Soaring Heights, New Story, and Marikey. We have students presently at all 3 locations. Keep in mind, classroom count to hold in-house cannot exceed more than a maximum of 8 children. So we cannot load these classrooms up to 20, 24, 26 because we're mandated to stay at 8 or below. So in district, we rely currently on New Story. We have 2 classrooms, one's at Lincoln and one's at high school at the moment. The total cost of those present conditions is $1.45 million. And each one of those students is an approximate cost of $60,400. Next slide. So historically, our special education cost, you can see the average 5-year cost change is 32.44%. And this is actual. This isn't budget to budget. This is from 19 to 2024 based upon actual expenditures. Next slide. I wouldn't be remiss if I talked about our tax history impact. So some of the members that have been here before and with Dr. Perrin before, if you recall, his goal was to have a minimum of 1% tax increase a year since 17-18. And we shortened this slide just a little bit simply because we wanted to represent the most current years with Dr. Matzner now being here and what has transpired since 2022 to 23. So we've also included what the Act 1 index here is and what the GASD's percent tax increase. So over the 3 years, and right now as we prepare our next year's budget is 0%, and I'll go in to explain some options later. If we're just looking at those 4 years, we have a 0.676% average based upon what the percent index was. Now, bear in mind, the 24-25 and the 25-26 school year, the 1%, was attributed directly to ACTI's funding of the loan. So all other services, increases, contractual increases, didn't continue to go up, but we didn't address any new tax funds to attribute to those level of services. We ran some numbers within the office just out of curiosity. I'm one that wants to know if we obtained, if we had funds, at least to the index and or 1%, what was our lost revenue that we did not obtain over those period of times. So if we were looking at, excuse me, let me find my documentation here. If we were maintaining 1% over the last several years, the lost revenue was slightly over $3 million. If we went to the index over those period of years, exactly what the index was, it would have garnished an additional $8.2 million. And why I say this is simply because as we move into the next slide, revenues are supposed to equal expenditures. How you do that is a combination. The goal is never to use fund balance as one-time money to help balance your budget. The district has been doing that simply because it hasn't been raising taxes. The day has come to where our fund balance is no longer going to be able to be tapped. Our fund balance is 6% of expenditures. And again, if expenditures change, the fund balance appropriation change because 6% of the expenditures is what needs to be maintained by policy. So right off the bat, if we have $85 million worth of expenditures, 85.9, our minimum 6% unassigned fund balance per policy needs to be at $5.1 million. Our audited unassigned fund balance was just over $4 million. So, as I mentioned before, we do have a significant change in next year's budget. How we're going to balance it is going to take some major looking and looking at how we do things, simply because even if we have a 0% tax increase, for example, we have a $6.2 million deficit. We've historically used some proposed PSERS commitment that we have assigned funds by the board. So the increase in PSERS percentages that are calculated out on based upon salaries is an amount that's factored in every year so that we can bring some of that support back in to help a revenue stream. So in doing so, if a 0% increase in considering the PSERS assigned commitment, we're looking for $5.9 million as the gap. So there's no fund balance to rely on simply to fund that. If we were to look at a 1% tax increase, which is usually brings in about $360,000 worth of revenue, we are still looking at without the PSERS commitment, a $5.8 million gap, and with the PSERS commitment, $5.5 million that we need to look for. And with the maximum 4.2%, we will be looking at a $4.2 million gap of fund balance, or not fund balance, excuse me, just revenue versus expenditures. That's a gap that even a maximum tax increase cannot address. Like $4.26 million, it's very hard to obtain how to balance this budget without using fund balance. So why I mentioned the previous Act 1 index, I think hindsight is 20/20. If we knew the comprehensive plan was changing and we knew special education was changing with the IU, we could have been going to the index and we wouldn't have to worry about this type of deficit because we would have those funds already set aside. We can't raise taxes far enough or above enough to even ever come back with those funds lost, nor to address a $4.2 million. What are we going to do? It's a great question. We are going to look at services. Do we need to replace retiring teachers? Do we need to reassignments? Do we need to have all the contracts of other professional contracts in place? Do we stop funding our capital reserve with hopes that we have unassigned fund balance to help that moving forward? Do we cut positions is a question. Do we cut services? We obviously can't cut special education services because we already know there's a need there, and we already know that there's a need that we have to fulfill. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this budget. I don't anticipate any more additional state revenue, so it's really going to rely on local funding and how we can maximize. We have factored in some growth from some of the developments that are going on. We'll need to take a look at what those percentages are. I do know from last year to current year analysis, just in real estate growth without a 0% increase consideration, the real estate grew $894,000. So I don't anticipate any large changes in that fashion by looking at the other developments that we've already factored in. But we'll receive some updated data from the assessment office. We'll look at our earned income. We're going to look at some of our other services that we have. We're going to look at some of the additions. Is it really necessary, or can we put it off for another year? So there's more work to do on this budget, but this is the big elephant in the room. The gap is higher than we've ever had, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but this is not a good budget situation to be in. Any questions on the budget?
I've got one real quick then. So right now, the expenditures and revenues, I guess really on the revenues end, is assuming the full federal commitment.
Yes, it is.
1 point whatever million.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Another area that I believe that Dr. McFarlane can address is that we may be looking at some residency verifications that may bring back some funds to the district, but that is a work in progress. It's not something we can put some numbers to at the moment, but there are some things that we need to, further to take a look at, and, run some risk. Everything's going up. The charter expenses are going up. Transportation services continue to go up, as well as we have contracts in place with the association and others. So it really is going to take a hard look at some of the other services that we can address. But even 4% is not going to, which was our supplies, 4% is not going to make up the deficit of $4.2 million. So, and if anything holds bar, we are not the only district relative to this at this moment, simply because I think all of us, especially probably in Adams County, and York County, with the IUs changing its level of service, are making decisions to bring back services, simply because they still have to provide some level, whether it's sending the students out or whether it's having that availability within our district to provide that level of service. So we're not the only one in this particular predicament. I don't know if that weighs any weight, but more work to do. And like I said, we will continue to update the board. We will update you as to where we found any type of financial impact. Our goal is to reduce that 4.2 as best as we can. Our goal is not to use unassigned fund balance, but we may, once the expenditures reduce to some degree, then that unassigned fund balance will likely go up a little bit more, so we can kind of use maybe some of that. But more to come. And if you have any questions at all relative to the presentation, feel free to send them my way.
Not really a question, Belinda. Just a couple comments. I do appreciate the early information on this, even though I don't handle bad news well. I'm hoping this is possibly worst case scenario, that the governor is going to, with our friends in Harrisburg, are going to help us out a little bit more. At least I'm hearing some pretty positive information coming out of there for Adams County schools. I would just say, being on the board now, I guess around 8 years or so, as much as it is appealing to do a zero tax increase and become a hero of the community for 5 minutes, in the long run, just to meet contractual obligations, inflation, and all the other factors that go into this, it just doesn't make sense to do that. Or at some point, you and your district are going to fall off the literal fiscal cliff. And I really don't want that to happen to Gettysburg. So I do think, and I would just challenge this board, as we look at this, and the administrative team, I know you're going to go back and give a hard look at everything and make sure everything's justifiable. But the reality is we have a very small discretion over a very small percentage of the budget. Most of it is locked in and mandated and contractually obligated. So again, at some point when when past boards don't do their due diligence at times, current boards have to make up for that. And again, I'm part of those past boards, so I'm part of the issue there. So when I'm being critical, I'm criticizing myself as well. But so we're going to have to really pick it up. And but I do appreciate the early information that's going to help us along the way. And at least we know we've got some work to do, and I know you all have some work to do, and I know you will do that. So thank you for the early information.
You're welcome.
Educate me on LIU's funding.
Sure. LIU, the budget that you recently received, that is for administration services. So that is operation of the IU and the building in which they serve. Special education services are not approved by school boards. That is a level of service that they provide districts. They at one time, they billed by what's called a Schedule A, which is a whole schedule of services, includes salary and benefits and what that service looks like and where it goes. They used to have fair share, which meant you had to have classroom space available within your footprint. The model has changed with the IU, and my colleagues could probably say a little bit more detail on it, but the model has changed where they're selecting levels of service now, where they're not funding or they're not providing. They're having just as hard of time finding staff, and their staff and benefits are a different rate, of course, and it's spread out across the schools. So they're choosing what level of services they can provide, and many of the districts are bringing back services simply because it's a better rate, more cost-effective rate, and we need to provide the service that we otherwise could not get. So what we're attempt to do is still send our students. Sometimes we'll use local LEAs, which is our surrounding schools. We'll share classrooms and so forth. But the Schedule A is billed out and will be invoiced over a 10-month period. So our cost to the IU for special ed services is currently at $3.2 million. So I don't envision those costs changing because they're servicing students. I would envision our cost increasing on our own simply because we now need to, it's truly growth in the autistic support arena is really where this budget is coming in and where it's being hit the hardest. And autistic support service is not something the IU is providing for us anymore. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay. Yeah.
IU's revenue stream. Where do they receive all their revenue?
They receive some from the government, some from the federal government. They receive amounts per district for operational, that is, and special services. So, for example, they have a great technology support system at the IU, and they help do training, professional development. We take advantage of that. We pay a fee for that. We pay a fee for joint purchasing. We belong to the Joint Purchasing Board where we're able to obtain better rates on purchasing our supplies, purchasing our energy product, simply because we joint procure that. So there's other levels of services, but we pay to participate in it. It's just not the actual approval that you've done. And special education is billed out separately based upon the level of service that you need. So I'm trying to think if there's other levels of service. I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but they will rate, now moving forward, they will rate their level of service and what's available to the districts so they can choose which levels of service they want to rely on the IU for. And it will be invoiced to us based upon a year's worth, 10 months, and then there's a reconciliation that happens at the end of the year then.
Just along those lines, with the changes for special education. Along those lines, with the changes in special education, do you know what the margin increase is with just on the per student basis? You were throwing around about 70,000. Were we with the IU services under, over?
The IU services were over.
Huh.
Yeah. Now, I will say, we're getting very close and or more when sending our students out of placement. So we can provide more service in district simply because we have more control over the salary and the benefits than what it would cost going out. But again, sometimes going out for out-of-placement services is a better deal as well. Just depends on what services is because benefits are always a factor of what those rates are. So not knowing what they are, they'll say this is the rate and per day or whatever it may be. So it could range, depends upon what level of service and where they're pulling, their needs from, what organization that they're utilizing to provide that service. But our costs internally are far less than what it was to provide IU. So if we were to take a teacher's salary and benefits, ours would be less simply because our contract benefits specifically, are less than what the IUs were.
And we could keep you here all night. So, but
That's okay.
the other thing I just was wondering about was cyber charter school tuition reform, which I think was a pretty big number if that went through Harrisburg. But I haven't really heard much in the news about it lately. What would our potential district savings be? I know you did a presentation on this to the previous board.
Yeah. The rates have just been changed slightly. So cyber rates have come down. I would say they're a range from $5,000 to $10,000 down from per student. The regular ed bricks and mortars haven't changed in the rates, so they will maintain themselves. But I say within the first year you'll see a decrease of approximately $500,000 to $800,000. Not $4 million.
Not $4 million.
No. Yeah, but great question. It's definitely an area, as well as residency. We want to make sure that in terms of residency in the cyber charters that we are capturing district students.
Great, thanks, Belinda. Again, I'm sure there will be many, many more questions. When you said any questions, I think, yes, a lot, right? But it is a work in progress at present moment. So if you have any questions, please send them along and CC myself and Al, and we will make sure that information gets out to the board. We look forward to hearing more about it. I'm sorry I didn't wear black for you. I didn't get the memo. Board committee reports. So we saw the product of the policy committee meeting earlier on, going through many, many policies there. And our finance and facilities committee meeting is coming up this Thursday at 4. A reminder that that is the final committee meeting at that structured time of 4 o'clock. And starting in the month of March, we're starting that committee of the whole on the first meeting of the month. Program reports. Dr. Massner.
Yeah, I have quite a few things to go over. I'll do them all very quickly. I want to have everybody leave with some positive, some happy thoughts after the budget presentation. Starting with our monthly winners for our GASD Glows, which is a program we use to recognize staff throughout the district. Our winners for the month of January were Mark Smith, a counselor at the high school, Robert Kraft, who is a district maintenance tech, and Susan Medlock, who is a custodian at James Geddes Elementary. So I'd like to give a shout out to all of them. Winter sports has ended. Regular seasons at least have ended. We have a lot of postseason things happening. I'm just going to do a quick winter sports rundown. Boys wrestling finished the season 22-2. As a team, they were the District 3 AAA champions and qualified for states. For individuals, they won the Section 4 championship, and are sending 11 wrestlers to districts this weekend. The girls finished the season 17-2. As a team, they finished third in the first ever District 3 championships, which we actually hosted here at Gettysburg. For individuals, they also won the Section 4 championship, and they will be sending 6 wrestlers to regionals on February 28th. Our bocce team had their very first season this year. They finished 4-12, but there was an incredible amount of growth for those athletes throughout the season. I know if you had a chance to go and watch any of those games, they were a lot of fun. Girls basketball finished the season 9-13. Boys basketball finished 4-18. And then our swimming team had a very good season as well. They will be sending 8 swimmers to districts on the 27th and 28th. So I'd like to congratulate all of our Warrior athletes. We have a lot of them participating in some postseason activity, which is great. We are hosting 2 kindergarten readiness events. We want to welcome our new Warrior families that will be joining us next school year. The first one is scheduled for this Thursday at Lincoln Elementary at 5:30 p.m. The second kindergarten readiness event is scheduled for February 26th at 5:30 at James Geddes, and the third, March 12th at 6 o'clock at Franklin Township. We have a lot of staff working hard to get these activities put together to welcome our new Warriors for next school year. If you have nothing to do the weekend of February 27th, please come out and check out the high school's spring musical. Will be Shrek the Musical. It is going to be on Friday the 27th at 7 p.m. and Saturday the 28th. We have 2 shows, one at 2 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock. Tickets are available on the homepage or on the high school homepage on our website. And finally, you may have seen a post recently. We are hosting an event in March, on March 25th, called Keeping Kids Safe from Hidden Digital Dangers. We are partnering with FBI Special Agent Jeffrey Ford to present a program that evening for our families at the high school. Again, it's March 25th at 6:30. We're actually starting at 5:30 with light refreshments and a resource fair featuring other local agencies that support youth wellness and family services. Also would like to thank the Gettysburg Area Education Foundation. We've partnered with them. The first 100 GASD families registered to attend this presentation will receive a free copy of the book, The Anxious Generation, which is a very good book for anybody who hasn't read it yet. I recommend it. There's a lot of things in there that will tie well to the presentation. So we have done presentations on digital safety at the high school for our students. We have some upcoming at the middle school for our students, and we also thought it was in our best interest to do something for the community and for the parents as well. So that's happening on March 25th at 6:30. That's all I have. Our next meeting dates, I guess Alice will go over.
Sure. Yep. Thank you. Our next meeting date is on March 2nd, Monday, March 2nd, in this room. If there are no further items, then I'll take a motion to adjourn. Tim's not here, so.
Second.
You just have to say, so moved.